Hey everybody, welcome back to Grace Talks, Diary of a Believer. I am your host, Jalen Telisa, also known as Jalen Phillips. And of course, I am so excited to have y'all here with me today. We're diving into part 2 of our relationship series that has still yet to have a name, okay? But it's an all-age discussion, so just hop in as we go. Quick reminder, hit the subscribe or follow button so you don't miss out on any of these wonderful episodes. So trust me, this series is going to truly bless someone out there. So I want you guys to not miss a drop of revelation coming from your girl. You get what I'm saying? Do you hear me? So to avoid you missing any minute of this no-named relationship series, I need y'all to go on YouTube, look for Jalen Telisa, and you'll see the podcast playlist on my page. Or do what you've been doing, hit the subscribe button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts so that you can get notifications and keep up with us. And by us, I do mean me and Mr. JP. Yes, Mr. Jalen will be back as a finale for this relationship series. So that's something you don't want to miss. The man of God definitely has some wisdom when it comes to men's perspectives and overall perspectives on us millennials, youngins, and older. Sorry to call y'all old, but older people, more seasoned. Yeah, I like that one. More seasoned relationships. So anyways, again, don't forget to subscribe to however you podcast. You get what I'm saying? All right. We're going to dive right into this. We're exploring the book of Ruth throughout this series. We're going to unpack the 4 chapters, aspect for aspect. Okay. So if you're joining us for the first time, last episode, we talked about cleaning up our act, right? Which highlighted some characteristics that were shared between Ruth and Boaz. And we highlighted those characteristics as a way to evaluate potential partners. On today, we're focusing on trying again. Okay? Keep an open mind. We're focusing on the aspect of trying again today. Okay? So again, we're going to do a quick recap for those of you that are tuning in for the first time on today. Ruth is basically a widow, but she's also the daughter-in-law to a Naomi, which has also lost her husband and her son. Naomi decides to return back to her hometown, and Ruth wants to join her. So while she's in this unfamiliar place, Ruth works in a field that was owned by Boaz, who eventually becomes her husband, right? And this interaction between them two gives Naomi hope and a new sense of joy towards the end of the story, which we'll get there today. All right. And 2, because the book of Ruth is only 4 chapters, I would hope by now, those of you that are on episode 2, I would hope by now that y'all have took some time out to read the book for yourselves. Okay. Do not allow me to be the synopsis for you. All right. Because you got eyes, you can read it for yourself, and you never know what God will deposit into you. So again, y'all, if you want to follow along, that is great, but please read whatever I read on this podcast for yourself. And that way you can build intimacy with God, and he can deposit whatever revelation that he wants you to have in that moment. Okay. So that's a quick little disclaimer here. Okay. All right. So back to the episode on today. I want to look closely at Naomi today. All right. So first of all, Naomi returns home, right? And she's welcomed warmly, right? So have this in your mind, right? Imagine going back to your old neighborhood after being away for a long time. Okay. Some of you may get praise. Some of you may get, pitchforks and fire torches or something, man, because y'all here. Okay. But in Naomi's case, she was actually welcomed. Like, people were thrilled to see her. But in the midst of these interaction with these people that were so thrilled to see her, Naomi quickly sets the record straight, and she's just like, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. Right. So it's just like, whoa. I can only imagine being the person that seen Naomi and was like, "Hey, girl, like what's up? What's going on?" And she like, "Girl, you do not know me." That is not my name, right? Like the Keke Palmer gif or meme, right? I know y'all done seen it where she's like, "Sorry to this man. I'm sorry. I do not know this man," right?
I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is. I mean, he could be walking down the street. I wouldn't know a thing. Sorry to this man.
So that's kind of how Naomi was, right? And so when she instructs them to call her Mara, I looked up the word Mara, right? Which we could use context clues once I read the text in a few minutes, okay? Mara in Hebrew means bitterness, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and read Ruth 1:19 through 21 here, just so you can get an idea of exactly how that interaction went. All right, so it says here, so the two women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them. And the woman exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So, based on the text, my personal interpretation of it, homegirl is depressed. Like, homegirl is defeated. I mean, you have to think about it. She lost her husband. She went away. First of all, she went away from home. Don't know why. Went away from home. She's away from home, and her husband dies. Her son dies. Like, you know what I'm saying? She like, well, how much more can I endure? I left the house happy, and I feel like God has deserted me in this time of my life, right? And so I came to the understanding of Naomi was so filled with bitterness and disappointments, and I believe it was rooted in losing loved ones unexpectedly, right? Who knows who or how long people are on this earth, right? And so when I looked up the word disappointment in its essence, it's really the feeling of unmet expectations. So it's as if Naomi had no way of knowing that leaving her home would lead to this painful journey, right? And so I realized that many of us, like Naomi, let negative experiences shape how we view our future, right? Because in today's culture, it's almost like we can subconsciously name ourselves Mara or Myra. I think it's Mara. We can subconsciously name ourselves Mara too, right? And it's as if we're giving up on certain dreams or relationships because of the past experiences in our lives have failed short, right? All these expectations we put on people, or all these expectations we put on our career, 9 times out of 10, most of them have fallen through, right? And so I want you to think about this. With that being said, some people have been in failed relationships and now see everyone through a filter of mistrust. You have some people that have gone through divorce and have sworn off commitment. And then you have another group of people where there is a prioritization of physical connection because they're afraid of deeper emotional investments, right? And honestly, I can relate to all three of those scenarios that I've just given right now. I used to think that all men were the same up until Jay, right? He was my little unicorn. He'll tell you to this day. Before Jay, I had attracted men driven by superficial interest, and that's really because I wasn't positioning myself for unconditional love, right? That's what I was attracting, okay? And I was holding on to some type of bitterness from my childhood. Yes, y'all. Yes. I was holding on to a few events that I didn't agree with, right? That inner child in me just had not gotten healed while I'm out here mingling with additional souls, right? I'm bringing my baggage and they bringing their baggage, and we just got a house full of mess, right? If I could just describe it, that's really what it was, So here's what I believe holds us back from real companionship, right? Number one, unforgiveness. Unforgiveness can hold you back from a lot of things, by the way. Unforgiveness. And this is basically holding on to grudges or expecting apologies, which can keep you stuck, right? Number two, I feel like lack of self-love. And that's a big one. That is a big one. And so when you lack self-love, it's like you like how you look, right? But you don't value who you are on the inside. Okay? And number three for me, the number three reason why or what could be holding you back from real companionship is expectations without boundaries. And this is basically going with the flow without setting standards, and eventually it leads to disappointment. Whew. And all three of these things, y'all, I have been through, and I will say, before Jay, I was in a toxic relationship, right? And so for me, I really thought tough love was real love. That's how I grew up. I grew up receiving tough love, right? And when I got out of this phase of, mingling, you know what I'm saying? When I got out of that phase, I started to yearn for a relationship, right? And so it was revealed to me that I was idolizing the idea of having someone because I felt alone. And that's where that lack of self-love comes from, right? Because I felt like I was beautiful, and I still feel that way, right? I'm not no ugly woman, okay? But in my younger days, I liked what I saw in the mirror. I kept myself up. I had on the latest fashion, nails, all the things, like whatever. All that material, superficial appearance crap that y'all keep up with today, I was keeping up with. But I didn't really value who I was on the inside. And I really didn't love myself the way God loved me, let alone seeing myself the way God saw me, right? And so the enemy played on that with me, with that feeling of wanting somebody there, not wanting to be alone, and eventually I had to realize that I was never alone. And that's most of us. We have to understand that we're never alone. There's no such thing. And so when God's voice came through family members, I didn't listen. I'm not going to hold you, because not a lot of people, but a few people tried to tell me to go sit down somewhere. But because of my resentment towards them, I ignored their guidance. Like, I felt like, how you going to tell me how to live my life when your life a mess? Right? That's a word for somebody. I don't know who. But yeah, so unforgiveness held me back. Lack of self-love has held me back. Expectations without boundaries has held me back. Like, I expected for him to love me the way my father loved me, right? I expected him to do right by me, because I would have done right by him. But I didn't set any type of boundaries on what that looks like to do right by me. What it looks like when I say love me like my father, right? And so these are the three things that I feel like a person should hone in on and check their hearts about, because these three things, I believe, could hold you back from real companionship, right? And so for Naomi, despite her bitterness, she encouraged Ruth to try again later in the story, right? So And I'll read the text in just a few minutes, but I want to break Naomi's role down when it came to Ruth. Okay. So Naomi is bitter, in this bitter state, in this disappointing state, right? But somehow she encouraged Ruth to try again, right? And when I say try again, she encouraged her to seek companionship, move forward. Like, girl, go do your thing, right? Because she's a widow too. Ruth is a widow too. And so in that moment, I felt like for Naomi to not bring Ruth down really showed Naomi's character and how she really truly had loved Ruth, even though that wasn't biologically her daughter. But her love for Ruth was so deep to the point where even in the midst of Naomi's disappointment, she did not try to trauma bond with her or hold her back, right? Because they're both widows. And that's what I mean by trauma bonding, right? Using someone else's experience in the now and connected it and trying to connect it with how your experience in the past. That's trauma bonding to me, right? You're trying to influence them to think that their outcome is going to be the same as yours because you've been through that already, right? And so that's not something that Naomi did. And, she basically encouraged her, showing all types of support, or showing that we can still support others even if we're struggling ourselves. And that's why I say, y'all got to reevaluate them friend groups. It all goes back to the principle. Who are you talking to? Who are you connecting with? Who are you confiding in? We really got to audit these friend groups because you don't need somebody trying to hold you back. You don't need someone, always looking at the negative of things, right? We need people that's going to uplift us even when they're not even at their most highest point, okay? You need friends that's going to pour into you, and you as a friend need to pour into that other person. But Christ has to be in the middle of these conversations, or else one word from the right person can send you in a new direction. And 9 times out of 10, that new direction isn't God's. Okay? So y'all be careful out here, right? And so before I get off into a whole different tangent with that one, let's get back to what's at hand, right? And so I had the question, why did Naomi encourage Ruth, right? Why is she uplifting this girl? Like, you down, you out, but why are you uplifting Ruth? Naomi uplifted Ruth because Ruth's blessings would ultimately bring joy to Naomi. Ruth essentially was a key part of Naomi's purpose. Okay. And so I'm going to read Ruth 4 verses 13 through 17, right? Just so we can paint a picture here of what I'm describing when I say that Ruth was a key to Naomi's purpose. Verse 13 says, so Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, Naomi has a son, and they named him Obed or Obed, not sure. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So the question was, why did Naomi encourage Ruth? Well, here's the answer. Through Ruth's new beginnings, Naomi found renewed hope. Jalen, what does that look like for us today? I'll give you an example. Me and my husband, right? We were together for 2.5 years maybe before we decided to get married, right? We were shacking up, going through hell together, illegally battling. The enemy has so much ground in that household, right? But through grace, we were covered and we're able to get through certain things together, even though we weren't legally in the covenant, right? And so when we decided to legally get in agreement and get in a covenant that God will honor, it was like the trajectory of our bloodline, because of that one yes, was shifted into a generation of new hope, new blessings, right? It's just a whole complete new bloodline off of one yes. Off of one yes. And so sometimes why, or the reason why some of y'all out there, some of you bitter, some of you lack self-love, some of you that are hard-hearted, right? Some of you that are judgy, some of you that are out there who has a grudge or has a negative feeling against trying something again, right? Here's why you need to. You need to try again because there's a name or a purpose that we carry that we're meant to fulfill. Okay? And it requires you stepping out on faith and trying again. Are you hearing me? There is something in your bloodline. That is something that you carry on your name that needs you to say yes to God, that needs you to surrender to God and try again. Try again. But this time, don't try based on your own carnal instinct. Have a relationship and have fellowship with God and try the situation again with Him in the middle. And so some of you, it may even require taking steps like Ruth did, positioning ourselves for a future, we may not fully understand, right? So who or what are you holding on to that's stopping you from moving forward? That's what I want you to think about. Who or what are you holding on to that's stopping you from moving forward? And even could bitterness be keeping you from your new blessing? My mother was married 3 times, and that's no slight at her. I love Nell. She was married 3 times. And on the 3rd try, I got to see what it looks like personally for a man to walk and follow God. I got to see a living example of what to look for in a godly husband. Like my father is a great man, right? But morally, he can swindle a little bit. He's very he got a little carnal in him, but he's a great guy. But the man that I see, Dedrick, is so firm and so foundationed in what he believes, and I needed to see that in order to have expectations for my husband. Because when me and Jay was shacking up, I didn't have no expectations. Just do right by me. Okay? And we could only assume what do right by me mean, right? Don't beat me. Don't hit me. Don't talk to me crazy. Just do right by me, right? But now that we're married, the expectations have kind of shifted, because not only do I need you to do right by me, but I need you to do right by God. I need you to lead this house according to what God says to you, according to what God wants you to do for this house, and stand confidently and firmly in what you believe in. And my God, has He answered every prayer that I send up to Him on behalf of my husband. So that's, again, an example of trying again. Nell, I'm very happy you tried again. Okay? I know you didn't want to, but I'm so thankful that you tried again. I'm so thankful. Okay, y'all. So again, thanks for listening to Grace Talks on today. Boop, boop, boop. I hope you were blessed and really enjoyed this episode. And also remember to hit the subscribe or follow button, or find us on YouTube by searching Jalen Telisa. Be sure to tune in to next time as we continue to journey through Ruth for the last time with our special guest, Mr. JP. Until then, take care and keep the faith. Mwah.